Water, Washington.
A magnitude 6.4 earthquake shook parts of Northern California this morning. Thousands were without power afterwards. No injuries immediately reported. Millions of Americans will see some dangerously cold wind chill temperatures this week, says the Weather Service. Much of the central U.S. will shiver, and there'll be snow in the upper Midwest today. Ukrainian President Zelensky has visited the embattled Ukrainian city of Bakhmut, the site of some of the most intense fighting recently. His office says he met with military personnel there. This is AP News. A Hanukkah reception at the White House, and President Biden vows to fight anti-Semitism.
Baruch atah Adonai.
The event opened with a prayer, Hanukkah, commemorating the rededication of a temple in Jerusalem, in which a lamp with only one night's worth of oil miraculously burned for 8 days. It's a joyous festival, but President Biden noted that a sharp rise this year in anti-Semitism in the United States has many Jewish people on edge.
Silence is complicity. We must not remain silent.
He notes that he's added permanency to the Jewish faith at the White House, having a permanent menorah built rather than relying on artifacts borrowed from Jewish groups.
Happy Hanukkah, America, and God bless you all.
Jackie Quinn, Washington.
And I'm Rita Foley, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now your WCPT 820 weather update.
Here's the latest Chicago weather update. A winter storm watch will go into effect here Thursday night. We'll see mostly cloudy skies here for today with a high in the low 30s. Winds out of the southwest around 5 to 10 miles per hour. Then for tonight, mostly cloudy, a low near 16. Wednesday, mostly cloudy skies, high of 30 degrees. Thursday, a chance for snow showers here, cloudy, high of 34. Friday, chance for snow, high of 6 above. From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. Currently, it's 25.
The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Saturdays at 1 p.m.
He said, I'm not going to give up trying to get political bias out of the FBI. I'm not going to give up on my own investigation of Hunter Biden and the Biden.
We have Reverend Thurston on the line.
Okay, and I've come up on Facebook.
What's he talking about, and why, when Iowans actually have challenges?
Pastor Thurston, how are you?
It's fantasy.
The Big Picture.
I am doing well. Would you mind explaining Hanukkah?
This is a potter's
to the audience today.
When people can't pay for their funerals, they are buried here in a lonely, desolate place, littered with unmarked headstones. No one visits. No one leaves flowers. But it doesn't.
It doesn't have to be anything. Just even after the good news.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I should have called you about it, but you're brilliant. I'm not worried about you. Next.
I got you covered.
I know you do, Jojo. How you doing? You going to be in town for the holiday?
Yes, until Christmas Day after Christmas, I got to fly to Cali to preach.
Oh, really? Are you going to be in Northern or Southern California?
Audio sounds great.
Fantastic.
We're good to go.
Yeah.
You going to be in LA?
Great. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, honey. I couldn't hear you. Where are you going to be?
It's for the California State Convention. I can't remember which church they're going to hold today.
Fabulous. That's wonderful.
Yeah. In a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different.
And have you heard of something called a Christmas truce?
Council.
Pastor, it might be something you might want to talk about.
Facts matter. You are listening to
WCPT. Can you, board operator, my dear, would you mind pulling the audio down just a bit?
Story started with fear and a lack of support.
The Christmas truce was called by the British. Oh yes, thank you so much. It was called by the British.
3 minutes.
Thank you so much. It was called by the British and German soldiers during the First World War, and they refused to shoot each other on Christmas Day. They started singing Silent Night to each other. And the truce actually lasted until January.
I never heard of that.
I had forgotten about it.
A study found the more aces, the more
Thank you for learning me something today.
Christmas truce. And Reverend Barber and Cornel West and many other pastors and theologians, and people in the social activist and theological space have signed a letter calling on a Christmas truce, calling for a Christmas truce in Ukraine.
Got it.
So I thought you'd be interested in that. Yeah. Just look up. I'll send you some articles. Look up Christmas, but you'll look up Christmas truce, and it is something. It is really, really special.
Okay.
So, Miss Jackson, I just looked up. There's a 2005 film called Merry Christmas. 2005 war drama film based on the Christmas truce of December 1914.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I might have to watch that.
Oh, absolutely. Can you text that to me?
Yeah. It looks like there's a couple others. Like there was one, like a made for TV movie in 2002. And there was a TV movie in 2015. I guess. It doesn't say like what channels or anything, but the main one, I'll send this main one to you, 2005.
Well, I've seen statues commemorating it when I've been in Europe. And it just really, it's just something that I think that we need to discuss, and of which we need to be aware. That and the fact that these soldiers started using their helmets and played soccer.
It says the movie's free to watch on Tubi.
Oh, please send that to me, please.
Yeah. Okay, I'll send it to you in a minute. Okay. You have about 20 seconds.
Oh wow. Okay. Let me pull this
I
up.
went fast.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Stand by. We're going to have a fantastic show.
Absolutely. Let the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight. Oh Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen.
This is Jonas Esposito, and WCPT is proud to support.
Okay, if you can turn that up a bit.
Middle class.
That's my bad. I let one of the 6:30 ads play, but it's no big deal.
Nothing to apologize for. Okay. So, okay.
Labor unions are more relevant today than ever. Proudly sponsored by Smart Local 265, IBEW Local 176, Finishing Chicago, and Roofers and Waterproofers Local 11.
Stand by.
All right. Thank you. All right. Let's be great.
We can change the world.
Amen.
Change the world. Change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, it's Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. I'm Santita Jackson. Happy Hanukkah to our brothers and sisters. They celebrated it at the White House, and they're going to have a permanent menorah installed at the White House. Praise God. Happy Hanukkah to all of our brothers and sisters. And Pastor Stephen Thurston is going to help us to understand the significance of it as he gives us the good news today. It's very, very important that we understand Hanukkah and Yom Kippur, and we understand Eid. We need to understand these great holidays of these tremendous religious traditions. We need to understand them all and embrace them all. We used to do that at my preschool, Hyde Park Day School, in Union Day School in Hyde Park here in Chicago when my parents were at the University of Chicago. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820 the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, getting just a little bit of feedback. We're going to work that out. And today we're going to talk about the Christmas truce. Did you hear about that? It happened in 1914, World War I. The British and German soldiers refused to shoot each other for Christmas. Then they started singing Silent Night to each other in their languages. And then they came to the fence and they approached each other, and then they started playing with one another. They used their helmets as soccer balls. Can you imagine if we did that today? Well, that is something that Reverend Jesse Jackson, Dr. Cornel West, Reverend Dr. William Barber, and many other prominent theologian, preacher, activists are calling on Ukraine, Russia, and the United States and NATO to do, to drop their arms. What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278. And of course, you know we've got to talk about the Trump referral, the criminal referral of the January 6th committee. What do you think is going to happen next? Will the Department of Justice take that up? And what will be the political fallout? Because, you know, politics is in every indictment, every investigation. It just is. That's just the way it works, everybody. What is going to happen here? What do you think is going to happen? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278, because what we're looking at in Peru, and I'm so glad that Dwight McKee reminded me, he said, hey, look at Peru. What's happening in Peru, that is because you have a popular president, at least he's popular in some quarters, who's been imprisoned. Hey, just saying. So I want to hear what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763-9278. The lines are open and we have some space. So I want to hear from you. 773-763-9278. There's a seat at this panel table and it's waiting for you to sit in it. 773-763-9278. Let's get to some of these headlines. It is cold, everybody. Cold. Please be careful. And it's going to be cold for the foreseeable. Everybody is just freezing out here. Chicago will have a high of 32 degrees. That's as high as it's going to get. Snow showers. And Minneapolis, St. Paul, oh my gosh, bless you at AM 950 radio. I'm loving you, everybody. 4 degrees above zero, partly cloudy. If you see anyone who's out on the streets, anyone homeless, please call the police and get them to a shelter, not to jail, to a shelter. Nobody should be out in this cold. In Chicago, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, anywhere. Fire station. People need to go where they can be warm. Please, let us help one another out, particularly in this season. In the NFL, well, the Packers 24, the Rams 12, and the NBA, the Timberwolves 116, and the Mavericks 106. The Bulls will be playing the Heat tonight in the NHL. Both Chicago and Minneapolis teams were at rest. Everybody. After months of back and forth deliberations, the January 6th committee on Monday referred former President Donald Trump to the Justice Department on at least 4 criminal charges. We will be talking about that. More than 25 million people across much of the central and northwestern United States are under wind chill alerts. Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, most of Minnesota, where the high temperatures will remain below zero, everybody, according to the National Weather Service. God bless us all. It is cold. Chief Justice John Roberts yesterday put a temporary hold on the termination of the controversial Trump-era immigration policy known as Title 42 that was set to end Wednesday. He did it in a brief order, signaling that the court wants to act quickly. Roberts asked the Biden administration to respond by this evening, by tonight, to an emergency appeal filed by several Republican-led states. We will see where this will go. Will it be argued in the Supreme Court? We don't know. Will they kick it back to the lower courts? We don't know. We will have to see. CVS and Walgreens are limiting purchases of children's pain relief medicine amid rising cases of flu, COVID, and RSV. Wow, what will happen with our children, everybody? Consumers are finally seeing some relief at the pump. After a year of high inflation, the national average for regular gasoline has dropped to $3.12 a gallon. I'm not seeing that on the south side of Chicago, Pastor, but okay, I'll go with it. And if you listen to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, He's in a state of celebration. He hails a strong outcome for the GOP as the omnibus, the bill that funds the government, excludes poverty-cutting child tax credit. Is that a win, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. Just in time for the holidays, the Democrats may embrace the GOP plan to boot millions of people off Medicaid. That is the headline in Common Dreams today, with congressional leadership expected to imminently release the text of the omnibus government funding legislation. Politico revealed yesterday that Democrats are preparing to join with the Republicans, who have demanded an end to Medicaid policies enacted because of the COVID-19 pandemic. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think about that? Upending life, daily life during the pandemic led to traumatic stress amongst U.S. mothers in particular, according to a study by the National Institute of Health in the first 16 months of the pandemic. We still need help. We're still in a pandemic, everybody. And you know, a lot of countries are apologizing for slavery all over the world, including the Dutch. And their apology has been dismissed by Black activists in the Netherlands as a neo-colonial belch. Ouch. Pastor Stephen Thurston, the author of the books, Neo-Colonial Belch. I had to, when I saw that show, I pulled it especially for you.
Thank you.
I knew you'd love it. I knew you'd love it. But, well, we need some good news today. Merry Christmas to you. May God bless you real good, Pastor.
Likewise. And to everybody listening, listen, the good news today is that you can regain your hearing. Communication theory speaks of the sender, receiver, message, and noise as the components engaged in the whole listening and communication process. And as we dive deep into understanding communication, we become aware that listening is the most important part of communication and is more than the passive act of receiving or hearing. It's the conscious processing of the auditory stimuli that have been perceived through hearing. In essence, I know those are big words. Let me break it down for you. Listening is an active process. Many people think that they are better listeners than they actually are. I believe some wives can probably say amen right there.
Yes.
But have you ever noticed how often we don't hear what we thought we heard? You think that a good number of us might be suffering from hearing impairment, that we're losing our hearing. But I don't think that's the case, Santita. Rather, I want to propose that many of us have either lost our ability to hear or never learned how to hear. So there are two types of listening that I want us to be clear on. Listening to understand and then listening to respond. And because we were never properly taught or we've chosen to engage in passive rather than active listening, many of us have lost our ability to properly and adequately hear other people. When we listen to understand rather than listening to respond, we'll find greater satisfaction in our interpersonal relationships, which then leads to growth and change. And the goal of active listening, deep listening, is to acquire information and understand a person or a situation better. Active listening is about a conscious decision to hear what an individual is actually saying. Now, comprehension and care are the two characteristics that frame the foundation for active listening. It's about getting to the heart of the matter and misunderstandings and finding out what's really happening from the lens of the other person. Active listening is essentially a slowed down conversation requiring both time and attention. So, if you're going to gain your hearing back, here's what you don't want to continue doing during the active listening. Number one, be thinking about what you're going to say while you're listening. That's not listening. Number two, push for an outcome. That's not listening. Number three, interrupt. That's not listening. Number four, disagree with the speaker. Hold down. So slow it up. You get your chance to speak. Let them get it all out. And as we begin to listen more sensitively to people, they'll begin to listen to themselves more carefully, paying attention to their thoughts and feelings. So by improving our listening skills, we can actually aid others in becoming more self-aware. And I get it. It's going to take practice, because we're used to interrupting, dismissing, and rushing to fix the problem. And it's going to take time to break these negative habits. Listen, active listening isn't about knowing what to say or having all the answers. It's about having the mindfulness and humility to sit with discomfort sometimes and acknowledge that you don't have the right answers. So let me give you 4 quick things and I'll be done that you can apply that can move you towards regaining your hearing. I just want to prepare you for some of those deep conversations that are going to be held this holiday season as you gather with friends and family. Number 1, be aware. Notice when you judge, analyze, state your opinion, change the subject, drift off, tell your side of the story, offer advice, agree or disagree. I want you to be aware of your internal processes. What's driving it? What's your why behind your need or desire to interject? Number 2, be present. I want you to give your undivided attention. Listening tells the speaker that you care about what's being said. Show the speaker that you're actively engaged in receiving the message that they're trying to send and resist the urge to make comments or judge what's being said. Number 3, be attentive. You want to be able to repeat back to a speaker what they've communicated with a minimum interruption. Show that you really understand what's being said, and if you don't, express that. Then number 4, and finally, be positive. The speaker is communicating something that they care about. So in what they're saying, you need to look for the underlying needs or values that they're seeking to express. What is it that they really want, and why is that important to them? And even if their approach with you has been in the form of criticism, don't readily dismiss it. I've come to discover that sometimes the criticism is really a real desire to create a greater connection. You can get your hearing back. We've just got to relearn how to actually hear people. Listen, Santita, it is the holiday season, and you mentioned Hanukkah as that kicked off yesterday. Mm-hmm. So let me just give a very quick insight for those who have heard about Hanukkah but unfamiliar with it. It's simply the Jewish 8-day wintertime festival of lights, celebrated with the nightly menorah lighting, some special prayers, and some good fried food. It celebrates the rededication of the Holy Temple. And so as we move through this holiday season, I want us to be mindful that a lot of people are celebrating a lot of different things. So let's be sensitive to people's traditions, their upbringing, and take the time to learn about something that you may not practice in your life, but can have elements that can actually benefit your life and your future.
I love how their holidays are directly connected to God.
Oh, yes.
And that God is so holy, they dare not utter God's name. And
correct.
I really, 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 really appreciate that. I think that is a wonderful lesson that we can take from our Jewish brothers and sisters. I mean, it is. Because, God is so holy, just so holy. Yeah. You dare not utter God's name. You can't do it. How dare you? I love that. I just think it's something that we can learn. We can learn a lot. We can learn a lot, and I'm just hoping that all of our brothers and sisters of the Jewish faith will have a blessed Hanukkah. And I hope that Christians, Pastor, will really take this very, very seriously. Take Christmas seriously and treat it as the holy holiday that it is. It's become secularized, and now we don't even have Jesus stories anymore on television. We don't mention Jesus, and you're apologetic about saying Merry Christmas, and I don't do that. I celebrate everybody's faith traditions and their expressions, and I expect you to respect mine.
That's right.
We can't push Jesus under the bus in this time. And I hope that everyone will have a Christmas celebration where Jesus would be welcome. Think about that. My parents used to say that all the time. And now it makes more sense more than ever. What are you going to be talking about on Facebook this afternoon?
I'm going to be talking about how to help your friends that are dealing with depression. A lot of us have people that are close to us who are really suffering, and we really don't know what to say or how to serve or come alongside them during their time of pain. So I want to help us understand what not to say and what to say and what to do to really support people that might be struggling.
Why now? Why did you want to have that discussion now? Because to me, this is also part of health. Mental health is part of your overall physical health. Because if your mental health is not right, you can put a stop on your physical health. People, take these temporary measures, and that become very, very, temporary problems, permanent solutions. Suicide is just never the answer. But this is when people do that, Pastor.
We say happy holidays, but it's not happy for everybody. There's a lot of unprocessed grief that people are dealing with. And I want us to just really be sensitive to that during this time. And then, of course, we have the tragic transition of life of young man, DJ Twitch, that happened just a week ago. And so, of course, that's heightened people's sensitivity to this thing called suicide. So I just want people to be adequately prepared so they won't say the wrong thing at the wrong time. That could really push somebody over the edge.
Because I have to tell you, I'm thinking of several friends, 3 of them who I'm not going to be able to call during this holiday season. And I'm calling their parents instead, because we've all been, friends who just from college on, we've been together. And I've lost them over the past year. And I have to tell you, it's been hard. It's been hard. But, I'm just waiting. I mean, I'm kind of here. I laugh about the things that we experienced, right? And so I've asked God to get me into a place where I will mourn their loss less and celebrate their lives and all the wonderful times that we had more.
That's it.
God bless you. Where can we find you this afternoon and at what time?
Jump on Facebook under my name, Stephen Thurston. That's Stephen with the PH. 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. You'll find me there.
And how can we get
seeing everybody?
Got to get your book. Where can we get it?
StephenJThurston.com. Stephen with the PH. StephenJThurston.com. It'll be right there once you log onto the website.
All right, everybody. You got to get Stephen J. Thurston's book. And we just thank God for you. I'm glad California is going to get a treat as you go out there and preach this weekend, traveling grace and mercies to you. And Merry Christmas to you and that beautiful family. Saw Pastor Meeks yesterday. Love him, love him, love him. And love your mom and daddy. Love First Lady Janelle Meeks. Love them all. And a shout out to my pastor. That's right, at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church. Although, it's hard, but Stephen's one of my pastors too. But Pastor Sharp and his wife, First Lady Bree. Wedding anniversaries. My soror sending you much love, girl. Back with more. I love her. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about President Trump, former President Trump. Something historic happened. He has a criminal referral to the Justice Department. Will the Justice Department pick this up and indict him? That's when he could go to jail. What do you think, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278. Back in just a minute. Love you, Pastor Thurston. Pastor Thurston, have you left? Okay. Okay, who do we have here?
Good morning, Santita.
Attorney Hoffler and Reverend Thurston did leave.
Okay. How are you, Reverend? Attorney Addie C.K. Hoffler. Girl. You know what? I thought about this. Well, I was thinking as you were talking, I said, Addie, I said, wow. I was at a big church conference back in 1999 as we were approaching the new millennium. And this beautiful woman in this flowing dress, she was fabulous. And I'm going to leave it right there because she's someone that a lot of us know. And she walked to the microphone and she said, and as we embrace this new aluminum, I was like, oh man, are you serious right now? And girl, and then she said it again. I said, oh wow. And I had to sing behind that. I was like, I could not wait to get to a phone and call my dad. I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait. I was like, Daddy. He said, baby, reading is fundamental. He said, now you see why Daddy wanted you in school. Girl. Education is key. You know, I mean, pick up a book. Look, Malcolm and James Baldwin didn't go to college, but educated, oh my gosh. They read everything. Now that's the real key. Yeah. That's the real education. Just don't read for the class and the syllabus, everybody. Learning is a lifelong thing. It's a lifelong thing. And new aluminum, but Addie, that took me. Like this woman my father met down in the deep South. I'll leave it there. Her name was Famali. Because her mother looked at the birth certificate and said, how nice, they've given my daughter a name. Female. So they call her Famali. Girl, people come up with some stuff. Honest to God, I met this woman and I'm like, my father, before I met her, my father said, baby, let me tell you the story. You know, Dad's got this, many people don't know. My father's got a tremendous sense of humor. It's just very, very dry. And he's brilliant. He's real fast. He's real fast, and he's real sharp. Really.
Ms. Jackson,
yes.
We have about 30 seconds. We have Attorney Jones on.
Yep.
Still waiting on.
It was great to see you yesterday. You look fabulous.
We're still waiting on Miss Wells.
And Dwight McKee.
And Dwight. So hold off on the live read, and I'll let you know when I have both of them up. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, you know, you can try her again, and then try her at the top of the segment.
Okay.
Like it's 6:57.
Okay. Stand by.
Thank you. Hello, Daryl.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. In the next hour, of course, we're going to have John Nichols talking about the Christmas truce that the British and German soldiers called during the First World War in 1914. They refused to shoot each other on Christmas Day. They sang Silent Night to each other. You've got to hear this story. John Nichols is going to tell us this story and why many of the leaders in the church today are calling for the same to happen in Ukraine. Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend Dr. William Barber, Dr. Cornel West, and people like that. Not the Pope, though. But, I digress. Everybody, it's great to be with you today. The January 6th panel has spoken. The House Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol, upending or attempting to upend the peaceful transfer of power, the election, the certification of the election of Vice President Kamala Harris and President Joe Biden. Well, they accused former President Donald Trump yesterday of inciting insurrection, conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of an act of Congress, and one other federal crime as it referred him to the Justice Department for potential prosecution. Now, the prosecution by the Justice Department would send him to jail if he were indicted and if he were found guilty. What do you think about that, everybody? What do you think about that? What are the political consequences? What's behind all of this? What's behind all of this? I mean, is this something that you expected? Did you expect them to go past him? Or did you expect them to do just what they have done, which is refer him to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution? Wow, this has never happened before. And it's a tremendous development. It really is. So I want to know what your thoughts are. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. What do you think would be the political fallout? Because for all of the discussion, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, I almost called you Atty, but that's our joke. Of course, the legal analyst, on Court TV, chair of Rainbow Push, and the past president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest Black bar association in the world, and the brilliant chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition, civil rights lawyer, and really one of the nation's leading voting rights advocates and lawyers, Daryl Jones. Wow. I mean, what do you think of this criminal referral? What does this mean, Attorney C.K. Hoffler?
Good morning, Santita, Daryl, and everyone. This is really, as you said, this is historic in so many ways. It's never happened. I can't say that I'm surprised that the committee has done this. I can't say that I am. I felt that the evidence, and I followed pretty closely the hearings and all the evidence. And early on, it was apparent to me that the president had violated the law, and that had violated the law so much that his conduct, based on the evidence, I'm not saying based on speculation, based on the evidence, meaning testimony, documents. And I think it's important for people to understand the difference between evidence when you're under oath, when you testify, it's whatever you speak in court when you're under oath. It can be written documentation. It can come out in various ways. And for this committee, they analyzed thousands and thousands of pages of documents. They listened to people's testimony, sworn testimony under oath. They, of course, looked at the laws and all of that. And their findings were so meticulously assembled that I was not surprised at all. I was stunned at this moment in history that we find ourselves here, that there was a sitting president that would knowingly, intentionally violate the laws and commit so many crimes. I mean, that is really what it is. So that, it didn't surprise me. I recognize a historic moment. What is, for me, a question for us to discuss is what will the Justice Department do? I think earlier on, Santita, on some of your shows, we discussed, I think I said the committee, the January 6th committee, will hand the Justice Department a gift and tie it up in a bow with all the evidence that they are amassing and assembling. And this is not something I think people need to understand that anyone wants to do. You don't ever want to be in a position of even discovering that a sitting president has engaged in such terrible, terrible misconduct, violation of the law, and criminal activity. You never want to know that. You never want to see that. You never want to experience that. But you also never want to experience the events of January 6th, which almost toppled this nation. So while it's historic, while it's significant, while it's very meaningful, we never want to have another January 6th, which was a fairly almost successful coup d'etat. It was a coup. It just didn't succeed completely. And so, Santita, the question for me is, what is Justice Garland going to do? I think that he is poised, the Justice Department is poised to bring an indictment. I think they're poised. That, they're special prosecutors, I'm sure, that they knew, because they've been watching what we've been watching. You don't really have to be a lawyer to understand that these are serious. The evidence that was unfolding was very, very serious. So I think they have been positioning to receive this information. What Mayor Garland will do is an open question. He recognizes, as we all do, the political fallout and what could happen to a divided country if a former president, were to be indicted and someone who's announced that he wants to run for the presidency. He recognizes what that can mean for an already divided country, but on the other hand, he also recognizes what his duties are as the top law enforcement lawyer in the U.S. government. And what his duties could be, some would argue should be, would be to indict based on the mountain of evidence. So what is he going to do? That's an open question.
You know, we've got some callers. You know, well, Attorney Jones, your thoughts?
Well, you know, good morning, Santita and CK. And let me start by, again, congratulating and just really a standing ovation for Congressman Benny Thompson, because he has just done an outstanding job leading this January 6th committee with regards to this delicate issue in terms of navigating the political waters. He's done, I think, a nonpartisan job. I think it's all been fact-backed with regards to the proceedings, and everything has just been, you know, just laid out for the American people and for the Department of Justice better than anything that I've ever seen come from Congress. He alone, and that committee alone, has done a lot to restore the faith that many Americans have in Congress and the ability to get things done in a very nonpartisan fashion, as well as a very comprehensive fashion. So kudos to Congressman Benny Thompson for that accomplishment. Now, I pivot from there and I go, now the ball is in DOJ's court. You know, they've done this fact-backed research. They have all the documentation. They have everything that they could possibly want from the Department of Justice to make a determination as to whether or not to carry through with any or all of the charges that have been referred to the Department of Justice and to Merrick Garland and Jack Smith. And what becomes interesting now, I think, Santita, is that, you know, we've said before on the show that it was going to get to the position where the integrity of the Department of Justice is going to be at hand. And that's where I think we are. You know, the American people have been exposed to all of the things that former President Trump and his colleagues were up to, all the shenanigans that they were pulling, the threats that were brought to the members of Congress that were on the floor and to our country. And so the question becomes, what will the Department of Justice do? And in answering that question, one of the things that differs from what Congressman Benny Thompson and the committee did is the DOJ has to look at what can they prove in court. It's one thing to have all the facts that are out there, but the question becomes, what can they prove in court? What of these allegations can they prove? What of these factual pieces can they actually present in a way that would be admissible in a court of law? And that's going to be the determining factor as to the charges that they bring. I believe that they really, for the integrity of DOJ, for the restoration and the rebuilding of the credibility of many of the USS institutions, the Supreme Court, it's important that they bring the charges, that they follow through, that now all of sitting in the country have had the opportunity to see from this body, from the January 6th panel of that body, the information of what has actually occurred. And now it would be, I think, disappointing is such a light word, but it would be so disheartening for DOJ to not follow through on what it should do, and having the indictments go in place against the former president and his colleagues and anyone else that's been involved in this charade and in this insurrection that was attempted in our country. So that would be my piece of where we are right now, is that the DOJ, their integrity is at issue. It's time for them to go ahead and file the indictment against them, and let's get this moving. Let's, if there's going to be a jury trial, let them start picking the jury.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts? Because I'm sure you're looking at this also through a political lens. Realpolitik is a very real thing. Real politics.
Well, crime is political, and who gets indicted is always political, Santita. I think what will happen is a couple of things. One is I think he may get indicted with one or two of the lesser charges that he can then negotiate with his lawyers and let him pay a fine and keep moving on that. I think that if they do a trial, I think what happens with the trial is, because indictment is one thing, trying him is another, as you run into the same situation as you ran into with impeachment, is that it'd be hard to find 12 citizens, 6 of whom are not Trumpites or didn't vote for Trump in a divided society. And so it'd be hard to get a conviction because it's going to be hard to find 12 people who are not anti-Trump or find 12 people, 6 of them who are not pro-Trump. And so it would be the same situation, I think, if they go to trial that happened when they tried to get an indictment. The other thing, danger you run, is that if he is indicted and convicted and jailed, like a lot of people want him to be, is all you have to do is look at what's happening in Peru right now to see where that can go. It's the exact same situation. Down in Peru, there's a situation where the former president has been indicted and put in jail, and the whole country is rioting. They're on the brink of a civil war in Peru for that reason, and it's exactly the same situation because there are a lot of Americans, quote unquote, and patriots, quote unquote, will see this as a situation where this is vindictive and it is a pretext to stop him from running again because they will believe that there's a fear that he can run and win. And so I think that they're going to measure that. I think the Justice Department is part of, government in the system and the society, and they have to look at all pending situations. And I think that they will play a role. I mean, when you look at a society where Pelosi's husband just got beat up and the governor of Michigan was at risk of being kidnapped, and January 6th, and they will look at all these real factors and all of these threats and figure out if it's worth it, if the return on locking one man up is worth being that kind of threat to the whole society. All of that, I think, will come into play.
What do you think, everybody? 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. No matter how absurd you thought the NFT cards were, they did sell out quickly. There's something to be said for that. Reverend Leon, how are you?
This is Jackson in Chicago. How are you, ma'am?
How are you? Where are you, Leon?
I'm in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina. I'm down south. I used to be up north in your neck of the woods.
Oh, my friends Jerry and Catrice Barnes were from Rocky Mountain. And Miss Flack, Roberta Flack, I know a lot of good people from Rocky Mountain, from those parts. And I was born in the Big G in Greensboro.
He in the city, 1962, as a matter of fact. Before he did I Have a Dream in Georgia. So this is a very historical city and definitely on the move. Even though I'm a Chicagoan, went to DeSale in Chicago on 35th Street in Wabash. Grew up on the South Side. Born in Detroit, A5A. So, hey, I'm in the heart of the city. And I was there during the daily time, and then Miss Jane Bird and my good friend Dennis W. Archer, a frat brother of mine. And so I'm a good family with Chicago. Of course, your father, Reverend Jesse Jackson. I've come under you all's lifestyle, and I've come to learn my city. But business at hand, one thing about being a teacher, and I talk to my kids all the time, is the justice system, because I want to keep them out of the jail let them look at the jail from the outside and not from the inside looking out. But they have to understand the political system as it is now. Many of the kids ask, what could happen to a president in jail? I says, I don't know if there's a way of doing it that way, but it is a way of correcting an error. This is an error, but it's a deliberate error, meaning it was planned. It answered all 5 questions of mine: who, what, when, where, why, and how. And I think the committee pulled those answers out. And now the main Department of Justice have to take those answers and put it into play. It's a piece of history that must take place. We have to change the paradigm. It never happened before. This shouldn't be. This, all that has to go away and put, this did happen. It did occur. It changed the life of many people, and some lost lives. So our educational system has to read this in politics and civics classes and places like that, as this is documented. We can document bad stuff. We need to document all the stuff. But the kids need to read it to learn. And the only way we're going to do it is to make sure it's processed. You can't slap it on the hand like a cincture.
Sure.
That will not happen. It has to be showed it occurred, prevent it from happening ever again in our lifetime, and to make sure that it's in documents so it can be read for generations to follow.
So you expect him to be indicted?
You
expect that? You expect that?
Why not? If it was any other person, would they not be indicted? And that's my thought. Why is it an exception? He's not above the law. Or if it was a female president,
some people,
not above the law.
Sadly, some people are. I mean, because you have these war criminals. I mean, there are places in the world where, say, Henry Kissinger cannot go, George W. Bush cannot go, because they are considered to be war criminals. You know, all of these things are very political. But I hear you. I'm just, so I'm glad to be hearing, to have the opportunity to hear you this morning. And I want to hear from everybody, including Reverend Leon down there in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. What's your final word, Pastor Leon?
I keep you in my prayers. Thanks for a Christmas gift we didn't want. That's called Cold Air from the Hawk out of Chicago. I wish I can get Lou Rawls Spirit to flat right back to Chicago from North Carolina, or we call North Kakalaki at times. We like to keep warm down here.
Oh, man.
But it's okay. We share y'all cold in Chicago.
Darling, it's cold outside here, but it's all right. You put some warm coals in my heart today, and I thank you for that. Sending you much love. Reverend Leon calling from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Pam from the west side of Chicago, the best side of Chicago. How you doing, Pam? Merry Christmas.
Good morning, Santita, and good morning to the guests. I just want to say Donald Trump has earned his right to have a day in court. The U.S. Department of Justice should use all of its resources to do so. Now, I think one of your guests state that the Donald Trump, they might not give him they might not convict him jurors because they don't feel he deserves it. However, I believe he does. And Santita, I'm not going to live in the spirit of fear of what the other side might do, because Donald Trump has earned this. He worked hard to have this. So we're asking, should he be indicted? My answer is yes.
Not should, but will.
I'm sorry.
Because the referral is...
I believe he will.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, I believe he will. And then I believe the DOJ will use its resources to subpoena those testimonies that the January 6th committee could not get. And if this doesn't happen, then it would seem that someone like a former president, would be above the law. And I could foresee this happening again. So my concern is, I'm very passionate about this. If Donald Trump does not go to prison, then let everybody else out. And that's my true feeling. After all the criminality, let him out. And this is not personal or hating Donald Trump. But I do recognize that the danger he represents, and that's not to say he's not the only leader, Santita, that represents this danger. But he will attempt to do this again. Donald Trump and his cohorts did this. They thought it out.
But you know
They
what?
thought, what if we get caught?
Pam, you're absolutely
didn't
right.
care.
But you know what? You know what
Sure.
bothers me about all of this? We have
What?
forgotten what happened in 2000 in Florida. You remember the Brooks Brothers riots, which to me were frightening. You had these white kids, young white Republicans, who had on their Brooks Brothers and their Lily Pulitzers and their little fabulous preppy wear. And they threatened the people who were counting the votes, the hanging chads and whatnot. And to see Liz
Sure.
Cheney
Yeah.
today talk about the threat to the democracy, her father and George W. Bush upended it. They did do that. They did that, and they took it to the Supreme Court, Pam. They took it to the Supreme Court. That was so dangerous. They set such a dangerous precedent. They did that. And we have pushed that into the recesses of history. And I think that that is dangerous. I really do. That bothers me that we, that we look at that. I mean, because, so much of our personal animus has been transferred to Donald Trump and George W. Bush. Hey, I've met him many times. He is a really nice guy. He's someone you can't like. You cannot not like him. You cannot not like him because he's just a good guy. I mean, he's just a really fun, all of that. But when I think of what they did with his brother and with his father, former head of the CIA, former president, to upend the election, oh my gosh. But all of that's it's been forgotten. I've got 30 seconds for you, Pam. It's just been forgotten.
Well, what I can add to that, perhaps, Santita, had we dealt with that situation and imprisoned those that needed to be imprisoned back then,
we didn't want to. You know what happened, Pam?
Well,
you know what? We pulled out a scandal on Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'm telling you what happened. Remember, in real time. And he became the conversation instead of being able to lead a march on Tallahassee to demand the full counting of the votes, which ultimately Al Gore won. So now the child that everybody scandalized is a grown woman who is a graduate of Spelman and is a functioning adult doing great things. We have got 1 million plus dead Iraqis on their watch. We have a Supreme Court that affirms the theft of an election and no one says a thing. I'm not saying that the Department of Justice shouldn't do their job, but I'm like, y'all, have we forgotten, Pam? Pam, I'm going to let you close this out. 30 seconds, sweetie.
Thank you. And I understand all of the history that you have spoke about. And it's true, Santita. My thought on that is perhaps had we dealt with those issues in the way of the criminality, we might not be dealing with a Trump issue now. That's just my thinking on that. But when we let things go, let them bypass, don't hold people accountable. And I love Benny Thomas, Representative Thomas said it correct. Accountability. He has to be held accountable. And I think an indictment and going to a prison, really, whatever that looks like, is an indictment. And there's accountability. Thank you.
Well, I think that with everybody. And I hope that we will be vigilant, everybody. That is the price of liberty. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Want to get your calls about the criminal referral of the January 6th committee to the Department of Justice. Will they indict former President Trump? What's going to happen, everybody? And John Nichols is going to talk about the Christmas truce. During the First World War, the German and British soldiers refused to shoot each other for Christmas. And the truce lasted until January. Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. CK and Dwight and Daryl, it just boggles the mind, because I remember being riveted in 2000 by, these people who were threatening the folks they charged the building. They were violent. And it's like we've forgotten all about that. And then this went to the Supreme Court, and then you had the Supreme Court affirm a steal of an election. I'm not trying to go past this. I'm just saying, we've done this before. And, because we liked George W. Bush, because he's a likable guy. we just kind of let this go. And when I see Liz Cheney, I'm like, yo, really? Come on. Woo.
But
and if you remember, Santita, the one that led the group was Stone.
Yes.
The same Stone. It was that led the group for for Trump. Stone's claim to fame is the dirty trickster. He was the dirty trickster under Nixon. He's been doing this 40 years and not going to jail. This is his career, is dirty tricks. Whatever president is in, Republican president is in, that's how he rolls.
I do draw a distinction, though.
Okay.
Between what happened, and I lived out, and I was in Florida during that time, and it was awful. I do draw a distinction because it was threatening, it was terrible. You felt a sense of injustice. But
we have Attorney Fancher.
Well, first of all, no one was killed. No one. I didn't see members of Congress having to be taken out. We didn't almost lose the vice president. All of those things. They just happened to have on suits, and that's not less threatening. But they weren't armed the way the insurrectionists were armed. I think there's something for me.
I mean, as far as we know, we don't know what they had tucked up in those khakis.
We don't know. This was Florida, but I got to go by the evidence that I know.
Yeah.
And
I guess for me, just when I see the high level people who were involved in that, you got a former CIA director who's a former president. You've got a presidential candidate whose brother was the sitting governor of the state that was in contention.
And
like, wait a minute.
You know what, Cynthia? I'm not at all.
Oh, I know you're not. I think we slid down the slippery slope because we didn't deal with that then. And like I said, okay, you pull out a scandal on Reverend, right? And you focus on that. This child is grown now, a college graduate, and has gone on about her business, living a great life. We've got 1 million dead Iraqis because these criminals were put in the White House. I mean, and you have you saw the politicized Supreme Court. To me, all of that is very dangerous. I mean, and it led to, there's a direct line between what happened in December and January, December of 2020 and January of 2021, and what happened in January 6th, 2021. That to me, it's just it's a generation, and it's a direct line. And I keep bringing it up, CK and Dwight and Daryl and Mark Fancher, because I think that if we miss that, we really miss this, because so much of this is, well, you don't, but I think so much of this is being driven by half of America cannot stand Donald Trump. And it's personal. With Liz Cheney, it's personal. She voted with him 90% of the time. I'm like, so your disagreement with him was what? That he pushed your father and the establishment Republicans out of the party? Is that what it is? He pushed you out? Is that what it is? Because it sure ain't policy, because you were with him on that. Just help me, because I could be just as wrong as two left shoes. Whew. And I'm wondering what DOJ is going to do. I wonder if they're going to go through with. I think Dwight might be right. They might go with a lesser indictment to please some people. But and will he run? Bloomberg came out with a report that said he risks a ban from elected office. I wonder how that's going to play itself out. And then Dwight, as you talked about Peru, I'm looking at these reports. These people they turned the country inside out. Inside out. I mean, there's so many insurrections, CK and Mark, and Mark is up there in Michigan. I mean, he's living with the militia. No joke. Mark, y'all getting down up there.
Oh yeah.
How about Georgia?
Baby,
How about Michigan?
Well, I know I'm with you on Georgia, but people miss Michigan, and please don't miss Michigan because it's up north. There's Detroit.
Oh no.
There's Lansing. There's Michigan. There's Battle Creek.
And
there's Michigan.
Don't forget
like there's Chicago and there's Illinois. And you take that train from Springfield up to Chicago and you go, oh, this is America. But sorry, we're saying Mark and CK, y'all, no, hold that till we get up on the air. Whew, it's too much. You're gonna make me, CK, you're gonna make my hair. You're gonna make me need to go back to the curling iron this morning. It's too much, girl. It's too much. I mean, excuse me. And CK, I'm gonna call you today. And Daryl, I'm gonna call you too. I'm going to call you too so I can let you know I've got a...
Miss Jackson,
thank you.
We have about 30 seconds here, maybe a little less. I have a caller that is really passionate about a 10-year-old boy arrested in Wisconsin and charged as an adult.
Oh, wow.
She really wants to talk about it, and she's real passionate. She didn't want to be on, but I told her to explain it because she explains it well. So maybe we could put her on right away.
Let me think about that. Give me a moment, okay?
Okay, sure. Just think about it.
Of course.
Stand by.
We can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today, Tuesday, December 20th, 2022, just a few days before Christmas. Happy Hanukkah to our Jewish brothers and sisters. The Festival of Lights. Festival of Lights. They saw God give them a miracle. They had like I love what the Jewish people do as they connect all of these holidays to God and their gratitude. They show you the miracles that God can perform in your life. And please, everybody, study the Festival of Lights. It could be a miracle in your life too. You don't even have to be a believer to see the goodness of the universe as manifested through this wonderful holiday. Happy Hanukkah, everybody. And Merry Christmas to all my brothers and sisters of the Christian faith, and those of you who are not of any faith or who are not of the Christian faith. I pray that the spirit of Christmas will be with you in this most holy and high season. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's get to some of these headlines as we talk about Trump. That's right, Trump. And I think I got a carryover caller from yesterday as we talked about what happened with Autumn Manahan. And we are working CK on this case, and Attorney Darrell Jones and Attorney Mark Fancher, Dwight McKee, this young would-be black valedictorian of her high school class who was arrested for responding to a white boy who kept calling her the N-word. And I was reprimanded yesterday by the station for spelling the N-word. But, you know, many African Americans, I have to say this, I know, are offended by the sanitization of the term. Because when we hear that word, it is frightening to us. We know that we need to leave the room. We know that something violent can ensue. And so, you know, there's a whole lot of sanitizing of our history that we've got to stop. We've got to stop. And so I was speaking on your behalf, but for people who might have been offended, and certainly the FCC, my apologies. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. You know what I mean? All right, everybody. In the NFL, the Packers 24 and the Rams 12. And in the NBA, the Timberwolves 116, the Mavericks 106. The Bulls will be playing the Heat tonight in the NHL. Both of the Chicago and Minneapolis teams, they got a little bit of rest. Gas prices are falling on average to $3.12 $3.12 a gallon. I'm not seeing it on the south side, but I'm taking AAA at their word, everybody. The World Cup champion Argentina's, well, guess what? The Argentinian people have declared this a national holiday. Good for them. They have not won this cup since 1986. Good for them. More than 25 million people across much of the United States, the northwestern and central United States. Put Chicago in that, are under wind chill alerts. Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, most of Minnesota. Everybody, please look out for people who are on these streets. Guide them to a warming center, a library, a fire station, a police station, not so that they can be arrested, but so that they can be warm, a homeless shelter. No one should be out in this cold right now. Sending much love to you in Atlanta, CK, and Houston and Orlando. You're included on that list. And honey, if you had seen this coat that CK was wearing yesterday, my girl is ready for the heat and ready for the cold. She looked fabulous. Love it, love it, love it. Chief Justice John Roberts on Monday put a temporary hold on the termination of the controversial Trump era immigration policy known as Title 42 that was set to end tomorrow, in a brief order signaling that the court wants to act quickly. If indeed they might even hear this case. Chief Justice Roberts asked the Biden administration to respond by tonight to an emergency appeal filed by several Republican-led states seeking to keep the policy in place to slow an expected increase in migrant crossings. Just in time for the holidays, Dems may embrace a GOP plan to boot millions off of Medicaid. And Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is hailing the omnibus bill that funds the whole government. He says it's a strong outcome. It just excludes poverty-cutting child tax credit, which pulled millions of children out of poverty. And, a lot of countries are apologizing for slavery. Well, the blacks in the Netherlands don't feel too kindly about this. In fact, they are dismissing the Dutch slavery apology as a neo-colonial belch. I did that one for you, C.K. Hoffler, Fancher, and Dwight McKee, and Daryl Jones. A neo-colonial belch. Who says that? People who fired up and can't take no more. You know what? I have a caller before we get back into the Trump criminal referral from the January 6th committee to the Department of Justice. I believe we have like a carryover from yesterday as we talked about the Autumn Manahan case and how this young black student, this young lady who's full of so much life, driven to the point of suicide because they did not punish the boy who called her the N-word. They punished her and put her in school jail where she had to put on the uniform of the imprisoned. Board operator, let's pull up my caller. Hi.
She's on.
Hello. Hi. Do you want to give me your name?
My name's Patricia.
Miss Patricia, how you doing?
I'm really not doing well. I've been under the weather, but that's not the point.
Yes, ma'am.
I was looking at the news, and I heard about this 10-year-old that supposedly had, shot his mother because she wouldn't get him some earphones or something. Something from Amazon. And he's supposed to have got a key and got the gun and shot her. But anyway, he's charged as an adult in Wisconsin. And I'm saying, well, his brain is not even half finished. And I know murder is, killing someone is hideous.
Yes.
I understand that. But he's 10.
Mm-hmm.
His brain is not finished. And he was taken to his grandparents' house. And he was saying, well, I miss my mom, but I wanted I think it was earphone. And I haven't heard much about it at all. I listened to you yesterday, and it hit me that sometimes things come up and we just take it for granted that everyone hear it. And right on the, I started researching yesterday to see what happened to him. Mm-hmm. And he's still in jail, $50,000 bond. They trying to get it to 100. They say, no, this is a hideous crime. But he's 10. Just think about it when you were 10.
Well, let me ask you this. Well, I took life very seriously at 10. What would you have just very quickly, because I've got to bring in my guest on this topic. But my board operator said you were so passionate that we wanted to hear from you today. What do you think should be done with this boy who killed his mother?
Well, I think that is horrible.
It is, well, sure.
That anyone killed anyone. Okay, but if it's scientific proof that your brain is not finished if you're a male to 25, 26, and, women a little later, then how in the world can you be held responsible? Or did he really? Is this something that, okay, I'm going to let a minor do this and this going to cover me up and because nothing's going to happen to him or her? We don't know, but just say that is true. I'm a mom. I got relatives that I love more than air. Okay? Someone, and I've had 2 relatives murdered.
Sure.
I would be so distraught, but he's 10.
Okay. Well,
he's
you know what?
Not,
Let me let the panel very quickly respond to you, just very, very quickly, because I had to bring on. Well, let me start with you, Mark Fancher.
Yes.
I mean, Mark.
I wasn't trying to interrupt your show.
No. But my board operator was concerned that she said you were so passionate, and I know that the show yesterday aroused a lot of passions, and so just very quickly,
yes,
Mark Fancher, why don't you respond?
Well, I don't have a lot to say about this. It's not an area that I focus on, but I do know that the Supreme Court has been very concerned about juvenile life without parole and ruled in a way that took into account some of the things that that the caller is referencing in terms of brain development and the fact that juveniles are not fully capable of forming the requisite intent sometimes for the homicides that they may commit. But beyond that, I don't really know how the individual courts are necessarily dealing with crimes of this kind.
Ms. Patricia, I'm going to look into this case. I'm going to look into it. And so, when we return after the holiday, I'm going to look into it. Okay, because we also.
I really appreciate that. And let me say one more thing.
No. I gotta run, Miss Patricia. I gotta run. But you know what? Why don't you hold and let my board operator get your information? Okay.
Yes, because he's talking about piggy bank and stuff.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell her that so she can tell you that.
Okay. I got you. But Mark Fancher, everybody's talking about President Trump, former President Trump, and this criminal referral. What does it say to you? And do you think that he's going to be indicted by the Department of Justice?
Well, it's really hard to say. I don't know to what extent Merrick Garland's Justice Department has acted in a way that's consistent with the way that the Justice Department has acted in recent periods, and the attitude has frequently been one that you find sometimes even among private practitioners and local prosecutors, where cases are not brought unless they're absolutely certain that they will, succeed, unless they're going to get a victory. It doesn't always matter whether the case is one that's legally sound, whether the evidence is there to sustain a favorable verdict if a jury chooses to bring one back. But it's a question of whether they're actually going to succeed in it. And sometimes reluctance to bring charges may stem from concerns about the judge that the case might be assigned to and whether they would respond favorably to a prosecution. There may be concerns about how a jury would react. And it is a situation that I've been concerned about, particularly in connection with cases involving police misconduct, where there have been really solid cases that the Justice Department has been presented with, but a reluctance to actually prosecute them for federal civil rights violations. criminal civil rights violations because of a reluctance to do anything that's going to result in anything less than a victory. So to the extent that the Justice Department has been conducting an extensive investigation, presumably for an extended period of time, that may be their mindset here. And the fact that there has been this referral from Congress may not necessarily suggest to the Justice Department that this is the signal to go ahead and prosecute. I think that they're going to have to make up their own minds about whether it's something that they want to do, regardless of the sentiments of the Congress.
Well, you're in an area where, militias are, quite frankly, they've been quite prominent and active. What do you think the fallout will be? Because everybody, many people feel that Donald Trump is being treated unfairly and that he's not guilty of insurrection. And now there's discussion in this Bloomberg article that he has risked a ban from elected office, everybody. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment states that no one can, quote, hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any other state, close quote, if they took an oath to support the Constitution and then, quote, engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, close quote. Now, of course, that was ratified in 1868 in the post-Civil War period. What about that? Because it just seems like there's a lot of political activity on all sides, Mark Fancher. Yeah,
that could trigger, a mass reaction. I know, especially here in Michigan. What I don't know that many people are aware of is the extent to which many people on a mass level have become psychotic. With respect to Trump. I mean, it's really a sickness that's brought on, I believe, by panic and fear over a sustained period of time, an extended period of time. They really are desperately afraid of losing their white privilege, their position within the society, because of imagined threats that are posed by others. It's not just people of color, but others, whether it's the LGBTQ community or immigrants or, the wrong type of immigrants from their perspective. Just all kinds of things that to them appear to threaten the way of life that they have become accustomed to and that they've taken for granted in terms of white people always, white workers in particular, always, if not having privilege, at least having the opportunity for upward mobility. And these threats, this panic and this fear is fed by demagogues like Donald Trump, and it has caused many people to just snap. And the devotion that they have to Donald Trump is nothing less than irrational. I was driving down Highway 94 last week, and there was a pickup truck with an elderly white gentleman driving it, and all over his truck were plastered signs that said simply, "I love Donald Trump." And it's not just that they have this passionate love for this man, but they have the capacity to become violent about it. Many may or may not know that just a couple of years ago, when the militia types that you described and others who are not part of formal militias, but who are just heavily armed, were disturbed by policies of our current governor concerning COVID restrictions, they actually invaded the state capitol, armed, fully armed. And unlike in Washington, where there was an attempt to prevent their entry into the Capitol on January 6th, these people were, the security people basically just opened the doors to them and let them walk in and to patrol the hallways with their rifles and their guns and their high-powered weaponry. And certainly the black legislators were terrified, but nothing was done. And when questioned about it, they were just told that, well, they have, Second Amendment rights. So that's the culture in this state. And so if not only the people who are just ordinary people have that mentality, but also people in official positions who should be keeping them under control, law enforcement and security people, if they have it too, then we've got a real dangerous situation. And if they are angered too much anything that the Justice Department might do, then I think we all need to hold on and get ready for a very bumpy ride.
Well, Dwight, you've been saying that. You've been saying that the real politics of this, there's that.
Oh, absolutely, and it's real too. I mean, it's some of these people have been preparing for this day for years and years and years. Every weekend they go target practicing, and in their minds they're protecting the government, protecting the people from the government, and so it's a very real threat. And they are psychotic. He's right about that. They're psychotic about Donald Trump. And they really feel like he is the savior of white civilization. And those who are out to get him are not just out to get him, they out to, to try to take the planet from them. And it's been their divine right from God to have the planet. And they have a divine mission to protect the planet from everybody else. And so it's very complicated, but it's very real. And you run the risk of invoking all of those dynamics when you talk about arresting a Donald Trump.
You know what? I literally have 1 minute for you, CK, and 1 minute for you, Attorney Darrell Jones. 1 minute, CK. Go.
Well, I just think that with our country being so divided, Santita, so divided, and with the mounting evidence that exists, Darrell Jones made an excellent point as a lawyer. It depends on what the Justice Department can prove. But they've got the evidence, and I do think that Merrick Garland is going to do something. I do think without a question. So we have to brace ourselves because we should never let January 6th happen again. Those forces will prevail another time, and that's what we need to be concerned about.
Be vigilant. Attorney Darrell Jones?
I'm with C.K. Hoffer on this one, Santita, and I'm with Dwight as well. I think there comes a time where, you're going to kick the beehive, and you got to be ready for the response. And it's time to kick the beehive because justice requires it. That's where I stand on it, Santita.
Well, this is a whole lot, everybody. I want to know what you're thinking. But you know what? Let's get into the Christmas spirit. Let's talk about this Christmas truce, CK and Attorney Jones and Attorney Fancher and Dwight McKee. Did you know that during the First World War, British and German soldiers refused to shoot each other on Christmas Day? And that Christmas truce lasted until January, until they got orders from their higher-ups to resume shooting. If you left it to the soldiers, they would not have killed any more persons. They started talking to each other, playing with each other, using their helmets as soccer balls. Oh, boy. And so Dr. Cornel West, Reverend Dr. William Barber, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and other leading theologian pastors and activists from the church have said, Ukraine, that needs to happen there. We need a Christmas truce in Ukraine. NATO, United States, yes. And Ukraine and Russia, drop your weapons. If only for Christmas Day. Let's talk with John Nichols about it on the Santita Jackson Show back in just a minute. Do you all want to hang out and listen to John explain that and then respond? If you do, if you don't, I certainly understand.
Santita, I do have to run.
Love you, girl.
But what a great discussion, a sad discussion. This sadness, quite frankly, and we have that we're at this point.
Which part, girl? Please, all of it.
The January 6th, the everything we talked about today. Mm-hmm. Young folks killing, all of it. So, but this is where we are in this country, and we gotta own it, face it.
We do.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to dash also because of a meeting, but it is an important discussion. I do wish I could stick around.
Well, I know Dwight will stay. Attorney Darrell Jones.
I'll try to stay.
Yeah, I'm going to have to run too, Santita.
Okay.
We will talk later on.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm going to call you.
Okay.
Okay. All righty, dighty. Dwight, I think you're going to enjoy this.
Yeah, I try to stay, but if I get cut off, just let me know. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, but I think you will enjoy this. I really do. I think you will enjoy this very much.
We have John Nichols on.
John Nichols, how are you, my dear brother and friend?
I'm very, very good. It's good to hear your voice, Santita.
It's wonderful hearing your voice. You know what? I invited Dwight McKee, he and Aline Walker were the youngest founding board members of Operation Push more than 50 years ago. Brilliant lay theologian, social scientist. And I wanted him to hear you tell this story and respond to it, because you, of course, now with these faith leaders from all across the United States and around the world who call for this Christmas truce in Ukraine, many people don't know about what happened in 1914 and for how long it lasted. And so I thank you for reminding us. But Dwight McKee, John Nichols, Dwight McKee, consider yourselves introduced.
Well, we know each other very well. We've been on the radio probably 100 times together.
Okay, I forget. But I'm so glad. Well, it's just this is so important, John, and only you would bring this forward in this moment, and I thank you for that. I thank you for that. And my board operator is so excited about it. My board operator went online and started looking for movies and books.
Yes, I did.
Go on and tell them, board operator. Tell them what you did. Hello, you can. I started getting text from my board operator. I found this movie. I found this, and this is so cool. Oh no, this is fantastic! And I ordered the book, The Last Fighting Tommy, and The Life of Harry Patch. I said, wow, I remember the story, but it had gone into the inner recesses of my mind, and this to me, as I started digging down and looking at how they conducted this truce, and that the truce lasted past Christmas Day, and how they started playing with each other, talking to each other. Wow.
30 seconds.
And how it was that, thank you, sweetie. And so it was their higher ups who made them start shooting and killing each other again.
That's right.
But I'm going to leave that to you. And I'm just very excited that you would bring, well, that's what you do, John Nichols. John, you just need to go on and get this preacher's license. Come on. Yeah.
Keep working at it.
That's what he needs to do, everybody. That's what he really wants to do.
Stand by.
Thank you so much, sweetie. Okay, here we go.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody, it's the bottom of the hour on Tuesday, so you know what time it is. It's John Nichols time, national correspondent for The Nation magazine. Always so excited to have him here. Just from the bottom of my heart, I just have to let him know just how much I love him and how much I appreciate his support. When I started this show, I said, John, I'd like to try a little something here, maybe have a segment with you. With you of all people. And he said, absolutely, Santita, let's just work out the day. I love you, John. And and I would, and only you would bring this story of this Christmas truce to us at this time, and really reminding us of what we need to be looking at for Christmas. Just in 1914, the World War I stopped for Christmas. Talk to us about that. Why did these soldiers decide to stop shooting each other for Christmas? What happened?
Well, for all the right reasons, I think. Look, let's begin with the basic context here. We're often told that wars are unstoppable once they begin. nothing can prevent them from going forward. And too often that's true, because too often we focus on leaders and generals and presidents and prime ministers and such. And what we fail to recognize is there are often wars that the people don't want to fight. And World War I was such a war. It was a terrible war, fought with at the intersection of military strategies from the past and the present. And so you had trench warfare, people fighting, literally with bayonets against one another. At the same time, you had chemical weapons. And so massive death and massive destruction. And the thing was that most people had very little idea why they were fighting, because it was really a battle between, a German Kaiser and a British king, and over, boundaries and borderlines, but not much sense of real moral mission or moral values. Very different than World War II. And so in 1914, you had, the front where British soldiers were all arrayed along, dozens of miles, and were in trenches. And then just hundreds of feet away, there were German soldiers arrayed in trenches, and they literally they would pop up and shoot at one another, and then occasionally jump out of the trenches and try and attack the other side, get shot down. It was a bloody, awful, ongoing, horror. And on Christmas Eve, on Christmas Day, in 1914, the first war on that front in France, they don't know exactly where, but they've pinpointed it relatively to at a particular spot. A British soldier heard German soldiers singing Christmas carols. What was the German version of Silent Night. And the British recognized.
I remember that.
Yep, Stille dem Nacht. Yeah, Stille dem Nacht. And the British soldiers recognized the tune, and they started singing Silent Night. And so suddenly you had this bizarre situation where soldiers in these trenches, who minutes before had been trying to kill one another, were singing together. And at a certain point on Christmas Day, a German soldier stepped out of the trenches on his side, carrying a small Christmas tree with candles on it, and walking toward the British. And he was saying, "You don't shoot, we don't shoot." It was as simple as that, kind of broken English message. The British got the message. They didn't shoot. The Christmas tree was planted. And slowly British and German soldiers began to step out of the trenches, to shake hands, to embrace one another as soldiers who recognized the dignity, the humanity of those who they were in combat with. And they began to exchange cigarettes. Those who had treats that had been sent to them from home began to share with the soldiers of the other side. Somebody brought out a soccer ball, and on Christmas Day they played soccer. They began to play not as teams, right? Not as armies. And it was so beautiful and so good that when this day of Christmas truce, obviously rooted in the Christian traditions that both sides shared, but also, in all the great religions, a recognition that there are times to put down arms, to beat swords into plowshares. When the day ended, they went back to their trenches, but the next morning, which is considered Boxing Day, it's a continued day of celebration in Britain and to some extent in other European countries. Instead of picking up their guns and shooting, they decided to keep celebrating. And so they came up and continued to play soccer and stopped shooting. And the word of the truce began to spread along the front. And more soldiers stopped shooting and started, playing soccer or talking to one another, or sharing, treats, or just not fighting. It became a crisis for the military commanders, because suddenly this war had, at least in a key section, stopped. And it
Stop. I don't want us to run past that. That peace became a crisis for whom?
For the military commanders, for the prime ministers and the presidents, the people who weren't on the front lines, whose lives would not be lost, who as George McGovern, the great anti-war activist and candidate that your father supported for president in 1972, as George McGovern said one time, he was tired of old men thinking up wars for young men to die in.
That's
and
right.
the young men had decided not to have a war anymore, and the old men wanted to get it started. It became a real point of contention, and literally British commanders and German commanders, sent messages to the front lines: start shooting again, start fighting. The front lines didn't do it, and it literally in some places took weeks to get the war restarted, if you will. Tragically, it did restart, and in the end of it, this was one of the bloodiest and most horrific wars in the history of the world. The United States lost, hundreds of thousands of young men to death and to, terrible bodily injury. I had a great uncle who survived the war, but came home completely changed and never really recovered. And families across the United States, across England, around the world know that reality. And so World War I turned out to be, another horrific war. But for a brief period, for a brief moment, there was a Christmas truce. There was a recognition that war didn't have to be what it became. And if we had actually listened to the soldiers and listened to the people on the front lines, the human beings who were forced into a terrible situation, it's hard to estimate how many lives might have been saved. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of lives. And when we recognize the intersection of World War I with what was referred to as the Spanish flu, the spread of disease in the last days of the war and in its aftermath, that might have been avoided, you suddenly recognize that the world itself might have been a much different and much better place if we had taken the message of and embraced the message of that Christmas truce in 1914. And of course, we talk about it today because spiritual leaders and anti-war leaders around the world are suggesting that another Christmas truce might be a very, very good idea in Ukraine.
I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. What you think about that, and what do you think about the call by these modern faith leaders who are calling upon Ukraine, Russia, the United States, NATO to do the same? What do you think about that? Before we talk about what happened with this wonderful letter signed by these leaders in the world of faith. Did you know about this, Dwight? I wanted to ask you about this, Dwight McKee, Dr. D. People want to know if you had ever heard of this.
Yeah, I did know about it.
So what do you? Of course you do. So what do you make of it?
Well, it was very famous at its time. It was, it was proclaimed all over, the world how unique it was. It's just I think that it was suppressed historically because it was such a bad precedent for the generals and for the politicians, and they never wanted to reoccur. But at its point, in its time, it was really proclaimed all over the world. And I think it really would be a great precedent for Russia, which is, the Orthodox Church. And it's supposed to be a real Christian society. And Ukraine, which is, combination of Jewish and Christian, to set another precedent that the soldiers will just put there as the brother just said, is the chain, put their
that we often battle. We have often battled
Miss Jackson, can you say something for me?
Back on.
media with powerful elites
Perfect.
who want to tell us that we have no alternative but war, that we have no alternative but violence. The reality is that people of many faith traditions have recognized throughout history that there are alternatives. And again, that's what brings us to this current moment. World War I was a war fought largely in Europe, not entirely, but largely. And a century on, we have a war being fought, in Eastern Europe and Far East, Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. And it's a horrible war. It's a war that has seen many horrors that are comparable to won't have quite as much use of chemical weapons and things of that nature. But there's awful bombings, there are atrocities, there are reports of war crimes. And so what you end up with is a situation where, again, we're coming toward a Christmas. We're being told that we can't avert this war, that it's just going to go on, that there will be bombs dropped on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day on families in their are trying to protect themselves. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. And the Reverend Jesse Jackson, Reverend William Barber, and others have stepped up. Not just Christian, but folks of Jewish and Muslim traditions have stepped up and said, the United States can and should take the lead in trying to encourage a Christmas truce. No guarantees it will happen. It's no guarantees that Russia will see the light or that Ukrainians will recognize this possibility. But it is worth the effort, not merely because it might save some lives on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and perhaps in a few days afterwards, which is obviously a good goal, but also because it might have a cessation of violence for at least a moment. And that cessation of violence might create the opening for the diplomacy, the negotiations that we are told President Biden has sought to advance. And so the Christmas truce is much more than just a myth or a fantasy or a goal or some, wild dream. It's something that has history, as we've talked about a little bit here, but also potency in this moment as a tool that might be used to dial down the violence. And that's why I'm so excited to talk about it. Also, I'm so excited by what Reverend Jackson, Reverend Barber, and others have done.
I'm very excited about that. And I'm thinking that we should also look at what we should have learned from 1914, that it was the military-industrial complex that pushed the soldiers to fight once again. Because if left to their own devices, they would have been at peace. And they would have embraced each other in those cases as brothers. But we're feeding a machine. I was just reading John Nichols of The Nation magazine, an article. I love these very interesting extended investigative reports they have at the Washington Post. And they were talking about this, I guess, the revolving door between the highest ranking military personnel and the military industry. And how, they basically get the top rank and then they go and make millions for the military industrial complex. I mean, it's routinely what they do. The people we see on television, that is what they're doing. And to think that they let the truce go beyond Christmas in 1914. They said, no, we're going to keep this going. We're going to share some food. We're going to play some soccer. We're going to work this out. And that the military brass were alarmed, John. They were like, wait, what's going on? Wait, that is so crazy. I mean, because, goes against everything you're taught in kindergarten, John. Don't fight, be nice, all of that. And it's like the original Mother's Day for peace. What did she say? I will not teach my children to unlearn all of the Christian values I've taught them. I'm not going to send them to war to do that. We've got to end this. Talk to me about what we can bring to this moment, what Reverend Jackson and Reverend Dr. Barber and Dr. Cornel West and these other leaders from around the world. Is the Pope on that list?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think so at this point. I think we'd know if he was.
Okay.
But I can tell you that the Pope is a very likely candidate to join such a list. And
I want to see him
obviously,
join the list. I do.
Yeah, I will make the point that this has been very much an American initiative, initially at least, launched by Reverend Jackson, Reverend Barber, and others. Liz Theoharis, Reverend Liz Theoharis, Cornell West. And so I think as the word spreads, of course, there should be the promotion of a Christmas truce by great religious leaders of all traditions, and ideally, as Dwight points out, by Russian Orthodox religious leaders as well. And so I do think that your point about the military-industrial complex is this incredibly important one. It was actually in World War I that we began to clearly identify this military-industrial complex. They were referred to as the war profiteers, the munitions merchants. And Robert M. LaFollette, the senator from my state, Wisconsin, was a militant critic of them. He was opposed to the war, and it's important to understand that World War I had a lot of opposition in the United States and around the world. He was opposed to the war because he saw it as pointless and unnecessary, and in many ways a war to maintain colonialism that the great powers would fight in Europe, but their goal was to maintain their colonial overreach in Africa and Asia and other places. And so he opposed the war. And one of the reasons that he said the war went forward was not because the people of the United States demanded it. In fact, he showed during one Senate debate evidence of referendums and votes and statements from across the United States opposing U.S. entry into the war. But because of the arms merchants, because the people that made the bullets and the bombs wanted to make more bullets and more bombs, and they could get richer. And it's interesting that one of the impacts of World War I on World War II was that in a much more necessary war, if we can say there's such a thing as a necessary war, a war against fascism, Franklin Roosevelt and those around him did something very interesting. They removed the profit from war. They put I believe it was a 92% tax on increased profits by manufacturers during the war. So if you were making more money during the war than you had before, you basically had to pay it all over to the federal government.
Oh, wow.
So they took the profit motive out of war. And that didn't weaken the U.S. Our industries that, produced more than enough weapons. They certainly, you had what was referred to as an arsenal of democracy that played a huge role in collaboration with the British and the Russians in defeating fascism in Europe. But the profiteering was taken out of it. And so it's possible to do that. And what I would say to you, Katrina, or what I would say to you, Santita.
Well, Van den Heuvel, I'm absolutely flattered.
My boss. Yeah. Well, good comparison for the two of you. But what I would say to you, Santita, is that when we think about war, if we think about the profit motive associated with it, we have much more clarity. That may not mean that all wars can be ended, but what it does mean is that many wars can be recognized as unnecessary. And if we circle back to the Christmas truce of 1914, I think that's what a lot of the soldiers understood, right? That war did not have to be fought. And it's not just the profit motive; it's also the political motives, the desires of those in power to rally their country on behalf of a military endeavor. I think that's something we've seen with Putin in Russia. And when people recognize that a war is being fought not for reasons of any necessity, but for reasons of politics and profiteering, that is when they rise up in opposition. And I would point out that even as we speak, there are brave people in Russia who have organized anti-war demonstrations, who have gone to jail opposing this Ukraine war. And so we know there are people who want this war to end. And my sense is that the advocacy for a Christmas truce would find a great deal of sympathy on the ground in Ukraine and in Russia.
Well, I mean, now our European allies are criticizing the United States. They're saying you're making money off of this. We need to stop this. This is happening on their soil. Eurasia, everybody. Europe goes into Asia, and it houses Russia. That landmass houses Russia, India, China, Europe, all of that. They're like, enough already. A Christmas truce, everybody. A Christmas truce, a Christmas truce. Very quickly, just give me 1 minute. What do you want us to know for Christmas, John Nichols?
So what I want us to know is that the lessons of the Nazarene live on in our time, and that the Prince of Peace taught us to seek peace. It is never easy. It is never given to us. It's something we have to work toward. But if ever there was a time to work toward it, now is that time. And just as the money changers were chased from the temple, the war profiteers should be chased from the world stage.
Love you, John Nichols. Merry Christmas to you. May God bless you real good, you and your beautiful family.
And peace on you, my dear.
Absolutely. And to our brothers and sisters of Jewish faith, all of these nights of Hanukkah, may you be blessed in this holy, holy, holy season. God bless you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow, Lord willing, on the Santita Jackson Show. Thank you so much, John. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Dwight, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I thought it was eloquent, what John said.
John's brilliant.
And those people who argue that the Vietnam War was pushed by Johnson because his wife owned part of the route, and it was the predecessor to Halliburton, and how much money she made off that war is why she pushed him to go to war. And then other folk would argue that the last wars were really pushed by Cheney and them because he was the vice president of Halliburton, and made a ton of money from that. And so the beat goes on in terms of war profit and the motive people have these wars.
And John, it's got to stop. And we have to bring back those lessons, right? I mean, we have to discuss the Christmas truce of 1914, and I think we cannot emphasize enough how disturbed the powers that be were by the unwillingness of the soldiers to fight. They could not be propagandized anymore. They said enough already. And now that I'm talking to him, I see he's my brother. Oh no, we're done. Wow. What if they had an insurrection? Yeah, I'm using that term, everybody. What if they just said, we're not fighting anymore? We're not going to study war no more. What would that mean?
Well, you know what it would mean. And this is the thing that as we think about the world, what we understand, those of us who've had the blessing of being able to travel, is that when you are with people in distant parts of the world of distinct religions and distinct traditions, there is an ability to love, an ability to cross lines of difference and to find common ground. It happens all the time. Our instinct is toward humanity. Our instinct is toward decency and kindness. We are pulled away from that by media, by powerful interests, by profiteering. This country just voted, our Congress just voted for a massive increase in the military budget. And the fact of the matter is that was not necessary. We didn't need, it's fine to defend yourself, but it is not fine to spend more on it than all the other countries, with which we might be competing in the world. And we are. And at the same time that we say we have, tens of billions, hundreds of billions more for the military, we say that we don't have the money for a child tax credit that would lift children and their families out of poverty. It is an absurd construct. And if we got the balance right, we would be able to end poverty, not just in this country, but in countries around the world. And if you ended poverty and you began to lift people up, the opposition to war would become all the more great, because Wars are often built on the desperation of people, on the dislocation and the difficult circumstances. And so if we turned our interest, if we turned our passion to peacemaking, to beating swords into plowshares, what we would quickly find is that it is possible to create a more peaceful world. I think the Ukraine war has shocked us all. It's reminded us that you can have an awful war in a very developed place. What we should understand is that there are wars going on all over the world, and people who don't get the attention that folks in Ukraine get and folks in Russia get are in conflict. I think of Yemen and the desperate, awful situation in Yemen, created by the fact that Saudi Arabia is attacking that country, and the Saudis do it with military support, with military aid from the United States. And so if we begin to deconstruct these things, we see precisely where we can and should intervene to save lives. One of them is to break that relationship with Saudi Arabia as regards Yemen. Another is to promote a Christmas truce in Europe. And I'm so glad, I got to talk about it today, and I'm very blessed in that regard. But I'm so glad that Reverend Jackson, Reverend Barber, Reverend Theo Harris, Dr. Cornel West, Jewish leaders, Muslim leaders, people from many faith traditions and from no faith traditions at all have gathered together to say that a Christmas truce is not just something we should talk about as history, but also something that we should talk about as our future.
Amen to that. I mean, and remember, material development is not the same as spiritual evolution and development. And we have a lot of, the Western world is materially highly developed, but spiritually stunted. I think we could agree on that. I mean, if we were spiritually developed,
right.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't have poverty. People would be able to actualize themselves and develop their gifts if we were developed spiritually. Dr. King talked about that. He said we were approaching spiritual death if we spent all this money on war, and you were not going to uplift people spiritually and make them who God sent them here to be. And so I just thank you for bringing this message to us in this Christmas season and in this season of light, as our Jewish brothers and sisters would say and would see. And I think that we have to embrace all of these traditions. I'm Christian and love it. That said, I can appreciate all of these traditions because they all have something to teach us, John and Dwight. We're supposed to learn. Supposed to learn. Some of the most Christian people I know are not Christian. They're not of the Christian faith. But boy, they teach me lessons about living every day. And I thank God for them. And I thank God for you, John. I thank God for you. And I thank God for you, Dwight. I thank God for all of you. And I thank God for my morning stars. I love y'all. Love you. So I'm going to let you go, everybody. I'm going to, and my board operator, love you too. Thank you so much for a wonderful show. And God bless you, everybody. I can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show, Lord willing. And have a great day, everybody. God bless you.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you. God bless you. Merry Christmas.